Hello and welcome to Stamp Dive. I thought I'd join you on my mission to go through my stamp albums and put stories behind the stamps. So as you can see, I've got a good little selection I've collected over the years. Always good fun to look at them, but now I want to dive a little bit more into who are on the stamps and who designed them. So today we're going to be focusing on Charlotte Brontë, and we're going to use technology to help us first off identify any stamps. Then we're going to hopefully gather some sources from different catalogues and then throw it into a notebook and see what we can get on the output. So here I'm just getting ready to scan the stamp. Here we go. Looking for it up. We've identified our stamp we're looking at. So this one is in commemoration of Victorian women in literature in 1980. And without any more to do, I'm going to let the computer talk about it.
All right, so today we're going to be diving into something pretty unique, I think.
Yeah.
We're talking about postage stamps,
Oh, wow.
but specifically how these tiny little squares
Tiny, yeah.
can give us a whole new perspective on literature and history.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what you can find out about, seemingly simple things like a stamp.
Exactly. And to kind of illustrate that point, we're going to be focusing on none other than Charlotte Brontë,
Oh, fantastic.
You know,
the galactic.
literary icon
Yeah.
behind Jane Eyre.
Mm.
And our jumping off point here is going to be a set of British stamps that were issued back in 1980
Okay.
that honored Victorian women in literature.
This is a pretty significant moment, I think, because it acknowledges how these women were shaping the literary landscape
Yeah.
at the time.
Now, this 1980 set,
Right.
it wasn't just about Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
It featured a few other, heavy hitters, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Like George Eliot,
Yeah.
who wrote The Mill on the Floss,
Of course.
Emily Bronte, Charlotte's sister,
Right.
who wrote Wuthering Heights,
Another classic.
and Elizabeth Gaskell, known for North and South.
Choosing those authors, I think, really gives us a snapshot of who was considered important in the Victorian literary world,
Right.
at least at that time,
At least at that time, yeah.
by the people creating the stamp set.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's zero in on the Charlotte Brontë stamp itself.
Okay.
It features a portrait of her.
Right.
It mentions Jane Eyre,
Mm-hmm.
and it's valued at 12 pence.
Okay.
It's really quite beautiful.
Yeah.
It was designed by an artist named Barbara Brown, who was known for her incredibly detailed work.
And that attention to detail is something that philatelists.
Philatelists?
Yeah, those are people who study and collect stamps.
Okay.
Really value. So,
Mhm.
for example, there are some Charlotte Brontë stamps out there with slightly shifted perforations,
Precious.
the little holes around the edges,
Oh.
or even a missing P from the denomination. Those little quirks can make those particular stamps much more valuable.
Wait, so there are people out there like searching for a missing P
Oh, yeah.
on a tiny stamp?
Oh, yeah.
That's some serious dedication.
Yeah.
But it makes you think, like, what makes a stamp so collectible?
Well, part of it is the rarity, for sure, but it also has to do with the story the stamp tells.
Okay.
These stamps aren't just about the image on them, you
Yeah.
know? They're little pieces of history
Okay.
reflecting cultural values,
Hmm.
artistic trends,
Yeah.
even political events sometimes.
So in a way, collecting stamps is like collecting stories.
Absolutely. And in the case of Charlotte Brontë,
Yeah.
having her on a stamp tells us something about her lasting impact on literature and culture.
Okay, so before we get too deep into that,
Yeah,
I have to ask, there's actually another Charlotte Brontë stamp out there, right?
Yes.
One from 2005.
that's right.
Okay.
To commemorate the 150th anniversary of her death,
Okay.
a new stamp featuring illustrations by Paula Rigo
Oh, wow.
was issued.
Interesting.
These illustrations are inspired by scenes from Jane Eyre,
Cool.
and they really bring the story to life in a visually striking way.
So we have these two stamps 25 years apart,
Yeah.
both honoring the same author.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I'm guessing they're telling us very different stories.
Yeah, they allow us to see not only how Bronte's work has resonated through time, but also how artistic styles and interpretations have evolved.
Okay, I am officially hooked.
All right.
But before we analyze those different interpretations,
Yeah.
let's just step back and think about this for a second.
Okay.
What does it actually mean for an author to be featured on a stamp?
Right.
Like, we've been throwing around phrases like cultural impact.
Yeah.
But what does that really look like?
Well, it speaks to the power of their work to transcend time.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yeah.
You, the listener, might be familiar with Charlotte Brontë, mainly because of Jane Eyre, a book written over 170 years ago.
Wow.
And yet here she is, still being celebrated and honored.
Yeah.
That says something about the enduring themes and the human connection that she was able to create through her writing.
So a stamp isn't just a stamp.
Right.
It's a statement.
It's saying, this person,
Yeah.
this story matters.
Wow.
And it matters enough for us to want to share it with the world.
And in the case of Charlotte Brontë, that message has been sent not once,
Right.
but twice.
Yeah.
So now I'm really curious to kind of unpack what each of these stamps tells us about her legacy.
Okay.
And how it's been perceived over time.
Sure.
Where do we even begin with that?
Well, let's start by taking a closer look at the imagery and the design choices of each stamp.
Okay.
They can reveal a lot about the cultural context in which they were created and the specific aspects of Bronte's work that were being emphasized at the time.
All right, let's do it.
Sounds good. So let's start with that 1980 stamp.
Okay.
What jumps out at you?
Well, the focus is definitely on Charlotte herself.
Mm-hmm.
It's her portrait, front and center.
Right.
Almost like a mini biography
Yeah.
in stamp form.
Right.
It feels very classic,
Yeah.
straightforward.
That makes sense considering the context.
Yeah.
This was part of a series celebrating famous people.
Yeah.
So the emphasis really is on her as this prominent individual, a representative of her era.
And it was a time when women writers
Right.
were really starting to gain more recognition,
Yeah.
but still kind of fighting for their place
Yeah.
in the literary world.
Absolutely.
So to feature Charlotte Brontë
Mm-hmm.
alongside these other really powerful women authors,
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big deal.
It was. It's
Yeah.
almost like saying, look,
Right.
these women made a significant contribution
Yeah.
to literature, and
Yeah.
we're acknowledging that.
Now, fast forward to 2005.
Okay.
And the stamp commemorating the 150th anniversary of Bronte's death,
Right.
this one feels completely different.
It does.
Yeah.
Instead of a portrait, we
Yeah.
get these really evocative illustrations by Paul Arago,
Yeah.
directly inspired by scenes from Jane Eyre.
I love that.
Yeah, it's like they're pulling us into the story itself.
And I love how these illustrations aren't just random pretty pictures.
Exactly.
They're really carefully chosen
Yeah.
to represent these key themes
Mm-hmm.
from the
Yeah.
novel.
Exactly.
Like we see images of confinement,
Right.
yearning for freedom,
Mm.
hints of the passionate romance at the
Yeah.
heart of the story.
It's all there.
So even though both stamps honor Charlotte Brontë,
Right.
they approach her legacy
Yeah.
in very distinct ways.
Yes.
One highlights her as this pioneering figure of her time,
Mm.
while the other focuses on the enduring power of her storytelling.
And that shift, I think, is really interesting.
Yeah.
It suggests that by 2005,
Hmm.
Jane Eyre, the story itself,
Right.
had become just as iconic as its author.
Wow.
It had transcended its time and was
Yeah.
being reinterpreted for a new generation.
Which makes me wonder, what was it about Jane Eyre that resonated so strongly?
Right.
Not just in Bronte's time, but decades and even centuries later.
Well, on one level,
Yeah.
it's a captivating love story
Yeah.
with a bit of mystery and gothic drama thrown in.
Of course.
But beneath that,
Yeah.
it tackles themes of social class,
Right.
gender roles,
Mm-hmm.
and the search for individual identity,
Yeah.
issues that still feel relevant today.
And Jane Eyre herself,
Yes.
she's such a compelling character.
She is.
She's independent, strong-willed,
Right.
refuses to be defined by societal expectations.
Yeah, she embodies this struggle for autonomy and self-expression
Yeah.
that I think we can all connect with.
So through these stamps,
Yeah.
we're not only seeing how Charlotte Bronte's legacy has evolved,
Right.
but also how our own cultural values and interests have shifted over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so fascinating to have these two stamps
Yeah.
separated by 25 years.
Right.
As this kind of time capsule,
Yeah.
they allow us to track those shifts
Mhm.
and see how Bronte's work continues to speak to us,
Right.
even as the world around us changes.
You know, when I first started thinking about this deep dive, I have to admit, I thought it might be a little
Yeah.
niche.
Okay.
Stamps aren't exactly the most exciting topic
Right.
for everyone,
Sure.
but the more we talk about it,
Yeah.
the more I'm realizing how much they can reveal about us,
Right.
about our history, our values,
Yeah.
even our artistic sensibilities.
Absolutely.
It's like we're peeling back layers of meaning
It is.
within each stamp
Yeah.
we examine.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Taking something seemingly small
Right.
and insignificant
Yeah.
and discovering this bigger story it holds.
Mhm.
And it's not just about the stamp itself. It's
Yeah.
about the conversations it sparks,
Yeah.
the connections it makes across time and cultures.
Speaking of connections,
Yes.
I'm curious to know what our listeners thinking.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about the stories behind everyday objects?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever come across a stamp
Yeah.
that made you pause and wonder
Right.
about the person or event it depicts?
Because these objects, like stamps, aren't just random things.
Yeah.
They're products of human creativity,
Right.
expressions of cultural values,
Yeah.
and often
Yeah.
carriers of personal meaning.
Right.
And by paying attention to them, we
Yeah.
can uncover a whole world of fascinating stories.
We've been talking about these Charlotte Brontë stamps, and, it's really got me thinking
Oh, yeah. About what?
about how stamps are kind of like these mini monuments.
Okay.
They're immortalizing
Yeah.
people or events
Yeah.
deemed important enough to be remembered.
It's true. They act as these tiny ambassadors, I think, of history and culture,
Mm-hmm.
circulating through the postal system.
Exactly. So now I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
What if we had the power to design a stamp?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Right. If you could choose an author
Right.
or a book
Mm-hmm.
to be featured on a stamp, who would it be and why?
That's a tough one.
I know.
There are so many deserving candidates.
Yeah, that's what makes this such a fun thought experiment.
Okay, if I had to pick,
Yeah.
I think I'd go with someone whose work hasn't quite gotten the recognition it deserves.
Mhm.
Maybe a forgotten author from the past or a contemporary writer whose voice needs to be amplified.
I love that idea.
Yeah,
It's like using the stamp as a platform
exactly.
to introduce new readers to these hidden gems.
It's about celebrating the diversity and richness of literature
Yeah.
and ensuring that, powerful stories continue to be shared and discovered.
So, listener, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
Who would you put on a stamp?
Right. What book or author has had a profound impact on you?
Yeah, don't hold back.
Yeah.
Whether it's a beloved classic, a mind-blowing contemporary novel, or even a children's book that sparked your imagination.
Because every story, no matter how big or small,
Right?
has the power to connect us.
To teach us and to inspire us.
And who knows, maybe by sharing your stamp idea, you'll introduce someone else to a life-changing read.
So there you have it. From a couple of postage stamps,
Yeah.
we've explored Charlotte Bronte's legacy,
That's right.
the evolution of artistic interpretation,
Mm.
and the fascinating world of philately.
But more importantly, I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity
Yes,
and encouraged you to see the hidden stories
Ah.
all around you.
because sometimes
Yeah.
the most ordinary objects
Right.
hold the most extraordinary tales.
So keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yeah,
and keep discovering
keep discovering.
those hidden gems.
Until next time, happy reading
Happy stamping.
and happy stamping.